Hi, I'm Desi Serna, author of Fretboard Theory and Guitar Theory for Dummies. In this series of 4 free guitar lessons, you see how to play over a dominant 7th chord. The scales and scale combinations used here are used in popular styles of music such as rock, blues, country, and jazz. This information is suitable for intermediate level players and up who are already familiar with pentatonic and major scale patterns. The 4 scale options include the dominant scale, the major pentatonic scale, the minor pentatonic scale, and finally, and most importantly, a combination of scales that mixes major and minor. Be sure to follow along using the free guitar tab and play along backing track that corresponds to this lesson. You can use any type of acoustic or electric 6-string guitar in standard tuning. I'm using a Paul Reed Smith DGT plus an overdrive and delay pedal from Visual Sound. I'm then going direct to a mixer with a Tech 21 SansAmp. In this, the first of 4 videos, you take a look at where a dominant 7th chord comes from and what its natural scale is, the dominant scale. A dominant 7th chord is built on the 5th degree of the major scale. For example, here's the D major scale. When you build a triad off of the 5th degree, A, you get the notes A, C sharp, and E. You put those notes together and you get an A major chord. When you add a 7th, you get A, C sharp, E, and G. That's a flat 7th, which is also known as a minor 7th. Put those notes together and you get an A dominant 7th chord, which in music is simply called A7. This unique combination of a major triad with a minor 7th only naturally occurs on the 5th degree of the major scale. In music theory, there are names for each degree of the major scale. The 5th degree is called the dominant. So the 7th chord built on the 5th degree is called a dominant 7th. When you play over a dominant 7th chord, the most natural scale to play is its parent major scale. So for example, with A7, you would use the notes of D major because A7 is drawn from the D major scale. Although you're using the notes of the D major scale, you're actually centering your playing on its 5th degree, A. When you use a major scale but center on the 5th degree, that's called Mixolydian mode. You can also call it the dominant scale. Those names are used interchangeably, and I'll be using them interchangeably throughout this series of lessons. You can play a Mixolydian mode, also known as the A dominant scale, by using the notes of the D major scale in any pattern, in any position, but centering your playing on A. Now that you know how to use the dominant scale over a dominant 7th chord, here is some sample playing over an A7 track. Okay, at the beginning of my playing example, I simply played up the A dominant scale, choosing to begin on G so that my 8th note line ended on the tonic pitch A. I then did the same thing in the next register. And by the way, you can try the fingering that I'm using or you can use your own fingering. It's not important that you copy my fingering exactly. Next, I simply descended the A dominant scale, starting on the tonic A and ending with a jump to the third C sharp. In measure 9 of the free tab, I played a typical walking bass line using the root, third, fifth, sixth, and flat seventh, like this. I then did the same thing, but an octave higher. Measure 17 is an example of how you might comp on an A7 chord by alternating the flat 7th, 6th, and 5th on top of the chord voicing. Beginning in measure 21, you hear two-note chord voicings called sixths. They're called sixths because the two notes are 6 scale steps apart. You hear similar shapes used in the song Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival, but in the key of G. Measure 29 features some licks based on the song L.A. Woman by The Doors. L.A. Woman is the song on which I based the play-along jam track. In fact, it's a great example of using Mixolydian mode, as well as some of the other scale options that I get into in the next videos. Once you get the idea of how to use the dominant scale in A, you can use the same patterns and the same licks and phrases over other chords in other positions. So for example, if you move everything up a whole step, you can play over a B7 chord. Or if you move up to the 8th fret, you can play over C7. At the 10th fret, you can play over D7. At the 12th fret, you could play over E7. And so on. Coming up in video 2, you take a look at using the major pentatonic scale. Hi, I'm Desi Serna, author of Fretboard Theory and Guitar Theory for Dummies. Welcome to video 2 in the 4-part series, How to Play Over a Dominant 7th Chord. In this free guitar lesson, you take a look at using the major pentatonic scale and one of its variations, the major blues scale. Anytime you play over a major chord, you can use the major pentatonic scale. Here's one way to play the A major pentatonic scale using what most players know as pentatonic pattern 1. Here are the same notes in the next position. Most players call this pentatonic pattern 2. Players often add a chromatic passing tone to the major pentatonic scale in between the 2nd and 3rd scale degrees. In the key of A, that would be a C natural in between the B and the C sharp. You can do this in all registers, and it looks and sounds like this. This added tone is actually a minor third. It allows you to add in some chromatic movement, and it also gives you a bit of tension with the minor third rubbing against the major third in the chord, which is an important part of the blues sound. Now that you know to use the major pentatonic over a dominant 7th chord, here is some sample playing over my A7 track. The major pentatonic examples begin at measure 33 in the free tab. And to start off, I simply played up and down the A major pentatonic using quarter notes. Next, I switch to 8th notes, and I incorporate some chromatic movement by using the minor third C from the major blues scale. Beginning at measure 41, you hear some licks and phrases played in the style of Amy by Pure Prairie League. I've got a bend there on the 3rd string. If you're following along with an acoustic guitar, you could do something similar, but just slide instead of bend. Finally, in measure 45, I play in a manner similar to Jimi Hendrix's The Wind Cries Mary, using some double stops. Then I finish off with some typical major pentatonic movement. Once you get the idea of using the major pentatonic over A, you can transpose the same patterns and the same licks and phrases to new positions to play over other chords. So for example, if you move everything up a whole step, you can play over B7. Or if you go up to the 8th fret, you can play over C7. At the 10th fret, you can play over D7. At the 12th fret, you could play over E7. And so on. Coming up in video 3, you take a look at using the minor pentatonic. Hi, I'm Desi Serna, author of Fretboard Theory and Guitar Theory for Dummies. Welcome to video 3 in the 4-part series, How to Play Over a Dominant 7th Chord. In this free guitar lesson, you take a look at using the minor pentatonic and one of its variations, the minor blues scale. Normally, the minor pentatonic is applied to minor chords, but one exception is in the blues. Blues-based music, including rock, country, and jazz, often apply a minor third over chords with a major third, specifically dominant 7th chords, like A7. Here's how to play A minor pentatonic and what most guitar players call pentatonic pattern 1. Here are the same notes in the next position. Most guitar players call this pentatonic pattern 2. Players often add a chromatic passing tone to the minor pentatonic in between the 4th and 5th scale degrees. This flat 5th interval can be used in all patterns and in all registers. Here's one way to play it. This added tone allows you to create some chromatic movement, and it also adds a bit of tension to the scale, which is an important part of the blues sound. Now that you know to use the minor pentatonic over a dominant 7th chord, here is some sample playing over the A7 track. My minor pentatonic examples begin at measure 49 in the free tab. And to start off, I simply played up and down the A minor pentatonic scale using quarter notes. Next, I switched to 8th notes, and I used the flat 5th to create some chromatic movement. Beginning in measure 57, you hear some Jimmy Page-inspired licks and phrases. Let me play that first part for you again, even slower. Finally, in measure 61, I use some bends on the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st strings, and I also move up into the next position. Once you get the idea of how to use the minor pentatonic over an A7 chord, you can transpose the same patterns and the same licks and phrases to new positions to play over other chords. So for example, if you move everything up a whole step, you can play over B7. At the 8th fret, you could play over C7. At the 10th fret, you could play over D7. At the 12th fret, you could play over E7. And so on. Coming up in video 4 is the most important lesson of them all, combining scales and mixing major and minor. Hi, I'm Desi Serna, author of Fretboard Theory and Guitar Theory for Dummies. Welcome to video 4 in the 4-part series, How to Play Over a Dominant 7th Chord. In this free guitar lesson, you take a look at combining scales and mixing major and minor. In the first 3 videos, you take a look at using 3 different types of scales: the dominant scale, the major pentatonic, and the minor pentatonic. When you combine these scales, you get a series of notes that includes both major and minor scale degrees, plus lots of chromatic steps. These features play an important role in the sound that defines rock, blues, country, and jazz music. To get started combining scales, first play the A major pentatonic. I'm using what most players call pentatonic pattern 2. Next, play the A minor pentatonic. I'm using pentatonic pattern 1. Now I'm going to play through the notes of both scales. It looks and sounds like this. I'm going to do that once more, but this time I'm going to add in one more note, the flat fifth from the minor blues scale. When you combine scales like this, you end up with major and minor scale degrees. For example, you have a major third in there and a major sixth. You also have a minor third and a minor seventh. And you also get lots of chromatic movement. Beginning with the second note in the scale, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes all in a row, separated only by half steps. Here's the same thing an octave higher, beginning on B at the fourth fret of the third string. In addition to having all of the notes of the major pentatonic and the minor pentatonic, plus the minor blues scale, you also have all of the notes of the dominant scale. This hybrid scale is sometimes referred to as the Mixolydian blues scale. Mixolydian because it's Mixolydian mode, also known as the dominant scale. And then blues because you're taking the minor third and the flat fifth from the minor pentatonic blues scale. Now that you know to combine major and minor over a dominant seventh chord, here is some sample playing over my A7 track. These final examples begin at measure 65 in the free tab. And to begin with, I ascend the A major pentatonic scale, but using the minor third as a chromatic step to the major third. You often hear slow blues songs started in a similar manner. Next, I play some licks and phrases that are similar to what you hear in Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry. Here I bend on the sixth to the flat seventh, followed by a run in the dominant scale, and I end with a hammer-on from the minor third to the major third, and I've got the fifth on the second string in there too. At measure 69, you hear a triplet pull-off trick that uses minor and major pentatonic notes. And the little line that follows is similar to what you hear in the verses to L.A. Woman by The Doors. That's basically the minor pentatonic blues scale with the flat fifth in there toward the end, but I added in a sixth as well. Beginning in measure 73, you hear how much chromatic movement is possible with this so-called Mixolydian blues scale. You often hear very similar lines used in country music, usually played on a twangy telly. Let me slow that down for you and play it again. Lots of chromatic movement in there, specifically from the second of the A scale, B, to the fifth of the A scale, E. Sometimes I use my pinky, sometimes I just slide with my ring finger. The beginning part of this lick is pretty much just the dominant scale. And then here's your chromatic movement. And then from there, so that's the flat 7th to the 6th, minor blues scale here, minor 3rd to major 3rd, and then from here you descend the dominant scale, put in the flat 5th from the minor blues scale, and at the end, minor 3rd to major 3rd before you end on the tonic A. From the beginning. One more time, played quickly. When you speed it up, you may want to try putting in some slides, either sliding up or down as opposed to picking all the notes. Finally, in measure 77, you use more Mixolydian blues chromaticism, but this time up in the next register. You may hear some similar playing in jazz music, usually with a clean sound on a neck pickup. Okay, let's break this down. Let me just take the first part of it and play it for you slowly. This starts off with a bit of a arpeggio. You've got the 9th, the flat 7th, and the 5th. That kind of makes like an A9 chord. And then you've got the 4th and the 3rd from the dominant scale. And then I played the minor 3rd. This is where I have some chromatic movement that's going to lead me into the next part of the phrase. But let me back up again. So that next phrase is going to be that begins on the major 3rd here, C sharp, and goes down the dominant scale with some direction changes there. From the beginning. Next phrase. Some more chromatic movement here. You've got the flat 5th from the minor blues scale into that arpeggio shape again. Up to the 4th, and then you go straight to the minor 3rd. And then when you begin the next phrase, you're going to slide into the major 3rd like this. So you end with this, and then it's... Let me back up. And I actually slide into that. I don't pick it. And again, notice that you've got the 2nd from the scale. We use the minor 3rd, the major 3rd, the 4th, the flat 5th, and the 5th. Lots of chromatic movement. Here's the whole thing from the beginning. I often cross-pick this where I continually alternate my pick without repeating any strokes. It all depends on the tempo. If I'm playing it quickly, I'll probably cross pick because it helps me stay right on track. But sometimes if the tempo is slow enough, I don't have to worry about continuously alternating. Once you get the idea of how to combine scales and use both major and minor scale degrees over A, you can, of course, transpose the patterns and all the licks and phrases to new positions to play over other types of chords. So for example, let's say you're playing a 12-bar blues in A, you might go up to the 4-chord D and play some of these licks and phrases over it like this. Then you might go up to the 5-chord E7 and play over it like this. Well, this concludes my 4-part series on how to play over a dominant 7th chord. Now you know some of the scales that can be applied to the 7th chords you encounter in rock, blues, country, and jazz songs. And you know that these scales can be combined so that you have a mixture of major and minor with lots of chromatic movement. This information will help you improvise and compose your own lead lines, as well as help you make sense of the licks and phrases you pick up from songs and other players. To learn more about music theory for guitar, including guitar scales, chords, progressions, modes, and more, check out either one of my books, Fretboard Theory or Guitar Theory for Dummies. I also encourage you to visit the truefire.com website, which features thousands of interactive video guitar lessons covering all styles, techniques, and levels. Well, thanks for watching, and as I like to say, play until your fingers bleed.